And figured out life is like a roller coaster ride. As soon as you think you figured this out, it's over. You know how you first get on a roller coaster ride? You think you know everything, and they strap you in and tell you, keep your hands down, take your hat off, don't spin. You're like, don't tell me how to ride my ride.
Let's start with a question. Not a trick question, a real one. Have you ever worked somewhere, given everything you had, showed up every single day, made your boss look good, made them rich, and then watched them turn around and treat you like you were replaceable? Like you were a face they could swap out the moment you stopped being convenient? Now imagine that happening on the biggest stage in the world. Imagine it happening on live television, on global movie screens, in front of billions of people, while you're expected to smile through it. That's Hollywood. And for a lot of black actors, that smile has a breaking point. Today we're talking about 12 black actors who hit that point. Some walked away from historic amounts of money. Some went to war publicly with studios, networks, and executives. Some cried on camera because they'd been holding it in for so long they simply couldn't anymore. And some burned bridges so big that even the smoke is still visible today. These are not just celebrities with complaints. These are talented, acclaimed, award-winning professionals who got to the highest levels of the industry and then pulled back the curtain. And what they revealed? Hollywood has never fully forgiven them for it. Stay with me. Because by number 1, you'll be asking yourself how any of these people stayed as long as they did. Number 12. Damon Wayans, the man who got himself fired on purpose. We start with a story that sounds like something out of a comedy sketch. Except Damon Wayans wasn't joking. In the early 1980s, Damon Wayans landed a spot on the cast of Saturday Night Live, one of the most prestigious gigs in American comedy. This was the dream. You get on SNL, you build your platform, you leverage it into movies and specials and your own shows. That's the pipeline. But Wayans had a problem. The network kept casting him in roles he found degrading, stereotypical, limiting. He was being handed a narrow box and told to stand in it and be funny. So during a live sketch, with the cameras rolling and America watching, Wayans played a straight police officer character as flamboyantly gay, not because that was what the script said, but because he chose to. Right there, on live television, with no warning, Lorne Michaels, the all-powerful creator and executive producer of SNL, fired him the second the cameras stopped. And Damon Wayans? He left with his head high. You might wonder, why would anyone torch a career move that big just to make a point? The answer is everything. Because the alternative was spending years on that stage performing a version of himself that he didn't recognize. And there was clearly a limit to how far he was willing to compromise. Hollywood wanted compliance. Damon Wayans said, "Not tonight." He went on to co-create and star in Living Color, one of the most groundbreaking sketch comedy shows in television history, a show that launched the careers of Jim Carrey, Jamie Foxx, and Jennifer Lopez, among others. And he did it outside of the machine that tried to put him in a box. Funny how that works. Number 11. Harold Perrineau, the man Hollywood made invisible. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. You can be on one of the biggest television shows in the world and still feel completely invisible. Harold Perrineau experienced exactly that on Lost, the ABC juggernaut that pulled in over 20 million viewers per episode at its peak. Perrineau played Michael Dawson, a father desperately searching for his kidnapped son, Walt. On paper, it's a powerful role. In practice, Perrineau says he was slowly erased. He went on record saying the show's writers consistently developed storylines for the white characters, while his character was left to tread water. Scene after scene, episode after episode, the emotional depth and story progression that defined characters like Jack and Sawyer was simply not extended to Michael. He pointed out the racial optics, a black father who didn't appear to care about finding his missing child, an image that played directly into damaging stereotypes about black fatherhood. After voicing these concerns to the showrunners, Perrineau watched his character get written off the show. Not because the story demanded it, but because he spoke up. Think about that for a second. He raised a concern about how his character was being used, about the racial dynamics embedded in the storytelling, and the response was to remove him. The message was loud and clear. You don't get to have that conversation here. Perrineau has spoken about this openly in the years since. He didn't explode. He didn't tweet in the middle of the night. He simply told the truth, and the truth cost him the job. Hollywood didn't want a black actor who asked questions. It wanted one who delivered his lines and went home grateful. Harold Perrineau was not that actor, and he's never apologized for it. Number 10. Orlando Jones. The Voice. They wanted to silence. When American Gods premiered on Starz in 2017, it was immediately celebrated for its audacious storytelling and rich mythology. And one of the most electric characters on the entire show was Mr. Nancy, a sharp, razor-tongued, fiercely intelligent spider god modeled on the West African deity Anansi. Orlando Jones played him with the kind of dangerous charisma that makes you hold your breath. Then a new showrunner came in, and he told Orlando Jones that Mr. Nancy was no longer welcome on the show. Jones didn't take that quietly. He took to social media and revealed that the new showrunner, Charles Egley, believed his character sent the wrong message for Black America. Think about that. A black god, a figure of trickster wisdom, resistance, and survival, was considered too much, too provocative, too black. Jones called it exactly what it was, a malicious decision to strip the show of its most potent black voice. He described being fired not as a creative choice, but as a silencing. The production company pushed back on his characterization, but Jones had already said what needed to be said publicly, permanently, on the record. Here's what's worth sitting with. Mr. Nancy's most famous speech in American Gods, a monologue delivered to enslaved Africans on a ship, is one of the most talked about moments in the show's history. It's the scene that made Orlando Jones iconic, and yet the character he used to deliver it was the first one the new leadership wanted gone. You don't have to connect all the dots. Jones already did that for you. Number 9. Ray Fisher, the man who named names. Ray Fisher spent years staying professional, years playing Cyborg in the DC universe, showing up to press events, doing the work, being a team player, and then he decided the time for being quiet was over. In 2020, Fisher went public with accusations against director Joss Whedon, detailing what he described as abusive and unprofessional behavior on the set of Justice League reshoots. He didn't generalize, he didn't vague book. He named Whedon specifically, and then he named the executives he said enabled it, including DC Films president Walter Hamada. But here's the layer that made this even bigger. Fisher claimed that conversations had taken place within studio leadership about whether having an angry black man at the center of the film was a problem. Not about the story, not about the character's arc, about the optics of a black actor expressing emotion. Warner Brothers said they investigated. Fisher disputed how that investigation was conducted. He refused to work on future DC projects under Hamada's leadership, walked away from a franchise role that could have anchored his career for years, and doubled down on his allegations repeatedly. Hollywood loves diversity until it has to answer for its behavior toward diverse talent. Ray Fisher forced them to answer, and the price he paid, losing his footing in one of the biggest film franchises on the planet, tells you everything about what happens to black actors who refuse to let incidents be swept under the rug. He has never backed down. Not once. Number 8. Samuel L. Jackson, the legend who refused to bite his tongue. Samuel L. Jackson is, by almost any measure, the most commercially successful actor in Hollywood history. His films have collectively grossed billions of dollars worldwide. He has worked with the most powerful directors alive. He is, in a word, untouchable. And yet, when Jackson has something to say about how Hollywood operates, he says it, regardless of who it makes uncomfortable. In 2017, Jackson sparked an international conversation when he questioned why Black British actors were being cast in distinctly American roles rooted in the African American experience. Using Jordan Peele's Get Out as his example, he asked aloud what the film would have been like with an American actor who had actually lived through that specific cultural history, who didn't have to act the fear, because they'd felt it. His point wasn't about attacking British talent. He made that clear in his follow-up comments. His point was about the system, about how Hollywood power brokers, who are overwhelmingly white, sometimes choose black actors from overseas because they carry less perceived baggage, less likelihood of making things uncomfortable, less history that might spill into the conversation. That's a systemic critique, and Jackson made it publicly, casually, without apparent fear of consequence, because at his level of power, you almost can't be canceled. But here's the real point. Jackson saying it aloud gave permission to a conversation that had been whispered in green rooms and on sets for years. The question of who gets to tell whose story, of who gets to portray whose pain, of whether diversity in casting is genuine or performative. Those are the questions Samuel L. Jackson has never been afraid to raise. Hollywood loves him for his box office numbers. It tolerates him for his honesty. And that tension? That's a story in itself. Number 7. Ice Cube. The outsider. They can never fully control. Ice Cube never fully trusted Hollywood, and Hollywood never fully trusted him. This was always the dynamic, and it made for one of the most fascinating ongoing battles between an artist and an industry in modern entertainment history. Ice Cube came out of NWA, the group that the FBI literally kept a file on because their music was considered that politically dangerous. When he transitioned into acting and filmmaking, he brought that energy with him. He made Boys in the Hood as an actor. He produced and starred in projects that Hollywood would never have greenlit if left to its own instincts. And he never stopped talking about the gatekeepers. In a widely shared video posted to social media, Ice Cube looked directly at the camera and said simply, "Some of you may not have realized that I'm not part of the club." He described the Hollywood gatekeeper structure, the invisible network of insiders who decide whose projects get financed, whose films get promoted, whose careers get protected. And he said bluntly that he was not in that club. And if you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're not either. He told The Hollywood Reporter that the industry still has gatekeepers everywhere, and that cool people still have a hard time showing what they've got in Hollywood. Then he said, without a drop of irony, "I'm ready to run a studio. Not I'm ready to accept the next role they offer me. Not I'm grateful for the opportunities. I'm ready to run a studio." That's the energy Hollywood genuinely cannot metabolize. Not anger, not bitterness, just calm, absolute confidence in your own vision, and zero interest in waiting for permission. Ice Cube has been fighting that fight his entire career. He hasn't won every round, but he's still standing, and the gatekeepers are still very aware of him. Number 6. John Boyega, the Star Wars soldier who told the truth. When John Boyega appeared in the first trailer for Star Wars, The Force Awakens, breathless, wide-eyed in a stormtrooper helmet in the middle of a desert, the world went electric. Here was a young black British actor positioned as the apparent hero of one of the most beloved franchises in cinema history. And then, over the next 2 films, it became increasingly clear that Finn's story was not being told. His arc was compressed, redirected, then effectively abandoned. By the time The Rise of Skywalker arrived, Finn was delivering comedic sidelines while white characters carried the weight of the narrative. Boyega had been patient. He'd played the game. He'd done the press tours and the panels and the promotional appearances. And then, in a 2020 interview with GQ, he let it all out. What I would say to Disney is, do not bring out a black character, market them to be much more important in the franchise than they are, and then have them pushed to the side, he said. It's not good. I'll say it straight up." He went further. He noted that the studio seemed to know exactly what to do with Daisy Ridley's Rey and Adam Driver's Kylo Ren. "When it came to me and Kelly Marie Tran," he said, referring to his East Asian co-star who faced similar treatment, "you know fuck-o all." This was a bomb going off. A still active cast member of an ongoing Disney franchise calling out the studio directly, in print, without a PR filter in sight. Disney said nothing, which, arguably, was its own kind of answer. Boyega later reflected that he had been afraid speaking out might end his career. He said it anyway. Because what was the alternative? Pretending it didn't happen. Smiling through the promotional circuit of the next film, while knowing exactly how little his character mattered to the people who controlled the story. He wasn't prepared to do that, and a generation of black actors watched him do it and felt something shift. Number 5. Gabrielle Union. They told her hair was too black. Take a moment with this one, because this is one of the most specific and revealing stories on this entire list. In 2019, Gabrielle Union joined the judging panel of America's Got Talent. By any metric, she was a success. Nielsen ratings confirmed she was the highest-performing judge on the show. The audience loved her. The numbers were there. Behind the scenes, it was a different story entirely. According to multiple sources who spoke to Variety, Union had raised repeated concerns about the workplace culture on set. She objected to a racist joke made by guest judge Jay Leno, a crack about a painting of dogs that he compared to items on a Korean restaurant menu. Union reported the incident. The production's response was to promise to edit it out, not to address it, not to discipline anyone, just to cut the tape. But you can't edit out what you've already experienced. That's what Union said herself, and it's worth sitting with. The emotional and psychological reality of encountering racism at work doesn't disappear when the footage is removed from the final cut. And then came the detail that made headlines around the world. Multiple sources told Variety that Union had been told her hairstyles were too black for America's Got Talent's audience. Read that again. Her hair, her natural black hair, was considered too much, too black, for a mainstream American television audience. Union was fired after one season. She subsequently filed a complaint detailing the toxic workplace culture, the racism, and the retaliation she experienced for refusing to stay silent. NBC and the production companies issued boilerplate statements about inclusivity. Gabrielle Union's receipts told a different story. Here's the question this raises, and I want you to really think about it. If an established, award-winning actress with proven ratings power can be told her natural hair is too black for prime time, what does that say about the actual relationship between black talent and the industry that profits from them? Number 4. Taraji P. Henson. When 20 years of holding it together finally broke, this one hurt to watch, because it wasn't performed, it was real. In December 2023, Taraji P. Henson, Oscar-nominated actress, Golden Globe winner, the woman who played Cookie Lyon on Empire and made the whole world fall in love with a character, sat down for an interview with Gayle King to promote The Color Purple. King asked her if she had really been considering quitting acting, and Taraji P. Henson covered her face with her hand and started to cry. "I'm just tired of working so hard, being gracious at what I do, getting paid a fraction of the cost," she said through tears. "I'm tired of hearing my sisters say the same thing over and over. You get tired." She revealed that despite her star power, despite being a household name with over 20 years in the industry, she still regularly hears the same excuse for why she can't be paid what she's worth, that black stories and black stars don't translate overseas. She'd been hearing it for her entire career, and she was done pretending it was acceptable. This wasn't her first time raising the alarm. Back in 2019, she revealed she had been offered just $100,000 to play the third-billed role in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button opposite Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett. She negotiated up to $150,000, still a fraction of the $500,000 she felt was appropriate for her position on the call sheet. It wasn't until she worked with Tyler Perry that she got her first real quote in Hollywood, and that was at $500,000. Let that sink in. A woman who would later be Oscar-nominated for that very role was offered $100,000. The message from the industry was clear. You are worth exactly as much as we decide you're worth. Not a cent more. After her 2023 interview went viral, co-stars and peers flooded social media in solidarity. Gabrielle Union wrote that Taraji was telling the absolute truth. Creator Robin Thede broke down the math in a multi-post thread, showing how much of a Hollywood paycheck disappears before an actor sees a dollar. The response was overwhelming, because what Taraji described isn't an anomaly. It's a system. And she wasn't asking for sympathy. She was asking for equity. She was asking for the industry to look at what it does to black women specifically, talented, decorated, proven, bankable black women, and stop pretending the disparity doesn't exist. 20-plus years in, an Oscar nomination, a Golden Globe, an Emmy nomination, Empire, Hidden Figures, Think Like a Man. A legacy that most actors would trade everything for. And Hollywood still wanted her to smile and accept less. She stopped smiling. Number 3, Idris Elba, the man who refused their label. Idris Elba is one of the most acclaimed actors of his generation. He has been celebrated globally for The Wire, for Luther, for Beasts of No Nation, for his film and television work across 2 continents. And at a certain point in his career, he made a decision that seemed controversial, but was actually profoundly personal. He stopped describing himself as a black actor. Not because he was denying who he is. Precisely the opposite. He told The Hollywood Reporter that labels like the first black to do this or the best black actor in that put him in a box that limits ambition, a box that frames his achievements as relative, measured only against other black performers rather than against the entire history of the art form. He said he didn't want to be the first black anything. He wanted to be the first Idris. Think about what that means coming from someone who has experienced the specific structural racism of Hollywood firsthand. He's not arguing that race doesn't matter in the industry. He's arguing that the way the industry labels black achievement keeps black artists perpetually in a subcategory. Never just a great actor. Always a great black actor, a qualifier that doesn't apply to their white counterparts, who are simply considered great, full stop. Elba also acknowledged that he has experienced racism in Hollywood directly and specifically. He didn't sanitize it or reframe it as misunderstanding. He named it. And then he said he chooses not to let those experiences define how he presents himself or positions his work. There's a quiet radicalism in that position. In refusing to accept the frame that Hollywood offers, even a well-intentioned frame of recognition and visibility, and insisting instead on being evaluated on an entirely different standard, his own. Hollywood spent years not knowing what to do with Idris Elba. That was always the tell. Number 2, Dave Chappelle. The $50 million decision that changed everything. And now we get to one of the most jaw-dropping moments in entertainment history. A moment that people are still arguing about. A moment that Chappelle himself is still processing decades later. It's 2005. Chappelle's show is the most watched show in Comedy Central history. The second season DVD set sold over 1.2 million copies in its very first week, making it the best-selling TV show on DVD at that point. Dave Chappelle is the hottest comedian in America, possibly the world. Comedy Central comes to him with a contract offer that defines the era, $50 million for a third and fourth season. He walked away. Not walked away and asked for more. Not walked away to negotiate leverage. He walked away, boarded a plane, and flew to South Africa. The tabloids lost their minds. The industry declared him unstable. The think pieces flooded in. People ask the question in the way they ask it when someone does something the system cannot process. What is wrong with him? Years later, in a 2017 interview with Gayle King, Chappelle explained. He said the show had started to feel wrong, that the emotional experience of success was nothing like what he'd imagined it would be, that the network was fighting him on creative decisions, that he started to sense that some of his sketches, ones he'd written intending sharp social commentary, were being misread and misused. He described what happened during the filming of a sketch involving a character in blackface. An audience member laughed in a way that made Chappelle stop. Not laughed with the joke's intention, laughed at it, in the way that people laugh when something confirms rather than challenges a prejudice. And in that moment, Chappelle said, he realized he had been helping to produce material that had slipped out of his control. He called it an irreconcilable moment. I was in this very successful place, he said, but the emotional content of it didn't feel like anything I imagined success should feel like. I just didn't feel right. When friends consoled him that at least he still had his integrity, he said, half joking, all truth, I go home and make my kids some integrity sandwiches. Hollywood declared him crazy. And then, in November of the same year he walked away from $50 million, he signed a deal for $60 million with Netflix. Let me ask you this. Who was really crazy? Chappelle has spent the years since doing exactly what he wants on his own terms, performing small club shows in Yellow Springs, Ohio, making deals when and how he chooses, refusing to let the industry set the terms of his career. He said it best himself. I found an altitude I was comfortable with. The altitude that $50 million would have cost him was his own soul. He wasn't willing to pay that price. Number 1. Dave Chappelle / The Broader Truth. Wait, before you scroll to the comments, because this is the part that matters most. You've watched 12 stories, 12 black actors at the top of their profession who, at various points, said, enough. They did it differently. Some with tears, some with legal filings, some with a one-way flight to another continent, some with a tweet that cost them a franchise. But the pattern underneath all of it is the same. Hollywood has always been willing to profit from black talent. The industry has discovered black stories, celebrated black performances, sold black culture to the world. The Oscars have gone to black actors. The box office records have been broken by black-led films. The numbers are there. What Hollywood has been consistently, structurally unwilling to do is share power with black talent, not spotlight. Power. The difference between being in the room and running the room. The difference between being cast and controlling what gets cast. The difference between being paid and being paid fairly. Every name on this list found themselves at exactly that boundary. They were welcome to perform. They were not welcome to question. They were welcome to deliver. They were not welcome to demand. And every single one of them decided at their own moment and in their own way that the price of continued welcome was too high. Here's the real question, and I want you to sit with this one. Not just as a viewer, as a person. When is the price of belonging somewhere too high? When does the cost of staying quiet, of smiling through it, of cashing the check and going home, when does that cost exceed the value of what you're being paid? These 12 people answered that question, each in their own way, each with their own consequences. Some of those consequences were brutal, some were career-defining in the best possible sense, but all of them chose themselves. In an industry specifically designed to get you to choose the industry instead. That matters, more than Hollywood would ever want you to think. So there you have it, 12 black actors who looked Hollywood dead in its face and said, not like this. Some of them paid a price. Some came out the other side stronger. Some are still in that fight right now, today, in ways we won't fully know until years from now. But here's what I want to leave you with. Every one of these stories only became public because someone refused to stay silent, because someone made the choice, knowing the risk, to tell the truth anyway. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these stories hit hardest? Was it Taraji breaking down in tears? Was it Boyega torching his Disney relationship? Was it Chappelle walking away from the biggest check in comedy history? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them, and I genuinely want to know what resonated with you. If this video did something for you, if it told you something you didn't know or reframed something you thought you understood, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel get this content in front of more people. And subscribe if you haven't already, because we're just getting started. See you in the next one.